Phone games today, so don't have to worry about that. As usual, we're going to go through our NBA Bet Pro model. That is our player prop betting model powered by the same team that does our DFS projections. They've put all of this data together for you. It should make you a better NBA prop better. It should help you grow your bankroll. If you haven't already signed up, take advantage of our 7-day free trial. You'll be able to get a feel for how you can incorporate this into your sports betting process. If you're somebody that has a bankroll on multiple sites, we have a best bets tab where you can see all of the best bets across multiple books. If you only have a bankroll on, say, DraftKings or FanDuel, you can see the best bets there. We have several different statistics that should be helpful for you, whether it's win percentage, expected return, the percentage of your bankroll that you should wager, the SBET percentage, or SEV, which is how much you can expect your bankroll to grow by on the given wager. That's all there for you. 7-day free trial. Sign up and take advantage of that. We are still having some issues on the back end with BetMGM data, so no BetMGM plays for today. Moving over to Caesars, we have John Morant here at the top, under 8.5 assists at plus 110. You can certainly take this if you want to, but I'm hesitant because we do not have a Memphis injury report yet. If you've seen these videos before, you know that we have the color-coded system that outlines questionable players. But since we don't have the Memphis injury report yet, we don't have anybody considered questionable on the Grizzlies. But it is a back-to-back. We have seen them rest players on back-to-backs recently. So I would be hesitant to take an under on John Morant just because there's some chance that you get Desmond Bane out and things start to look a little bit better for Morant. The next one, though, is LaMelo Ball, under 8.5 assists at minus 117 tonight against the Bulls. It is a good matchup, but we only have him projected for 7.4 assists. That gives you a 58% chance of winning this wager and an 8% expected return. We recommend wagering 6.8% of your bankroll, and you can expect it to grow by 0.36%. Moving over to DraftKings, John Morant once again at the top, but I'm avoiding that one until we get an official injury report from the Grizzlies. Next, we have Donovan Mitchell, over 2.5 3-pointers at minus 175. Mitchell played about 37 minutes in his last game, so you can expect full playing time from him. He's a few games removed from his absence. And we have him projected for 4.1 3-pointers. That gives you a 68% chance of winning this wager, a 7% expected return. We recommend wagering 9.1% of your bankroll, and you can expect it to grow by 0.43%. And finally, last but not least, moving over to FanDuel, and once again, for now, skipping over that John Morant bet, Brandon Ingram, over 1.5 3-pointers. He got up to 33 minutes in his last game. I expect that we just see normal playing time from him from this point forward. It is a slow-paced matchup against Dallas, but he's plus 158 on the over 1.5 3-pointers line. We have him projected for 1.7 threes, which gives you a 43% chance of winning.
Call sounds exciting, whatever it is.
It's the AV call. Weren't you on that for a little bit?
No.
Never?
No, I'm not on any calls.
I thought when you were doing behind-the-scenes stuff more.
Oh, yeah, I skipped most of those. Good for you. Big on responsibilities.
I know.
Meetings and timing and stuff like that.
Through that shit.
Exactly.
Welcome in. It's the NHA NBA show. Now, look at this. We're jamming. Can we keep that music? Mike's our producer, of course, Mike Lawrence, and Terry McBride is our analyst, right? He's just the shit. That Terry's just here, right? Like, when Terry's here, you know to shut up and listen. But I wonder, man, like, you are a man of good taste when it comes to music. Clearly, Mike is a man of good taste when it comes to music. So even if I'm not a man of good taste, I'm outnumbered 2-1 here. Is it wrong to suggest, Mr. McBride, that maybe we have a little music underneath our, like, I feel pretty good. That's some upbeat
that was
stuff right there.
That would have kept me going. I wouldn't have minded that if that little, had that little track, going behind us.
I don't know what the YouTube rules are and all, like,
Right. That's it. Yeah. We might get the entire channel taken down for violating somebody's copyright on a song that 9 people have ever heard. But
look, I'm not going to be the one to bring this whole channel down. All right, Terry, you have more stature in this place than I do. So it ain't going to be me, my friend.
I'm not trying to do that, but I'm never going to say that I'm not going to be the one to do it. Like, I don't want to totally disqualify that and take that off the table. You never know.
You're still on the board. Odds are still next to you. It might be like 100-1, but you're still on the board. What's up, man? I haven't seen you in ages.
Yeah, it's been a minute, man. I was thinking the same thing.
It's been a bit.
Likewise. But yeah, it's been back to probably baseball season, somewhere around there. The last time we were on a show together,
we might have snuck an NBA show in, but it was
maybe like early on in the season. But yeah, it's definitely been a minute for sure. But how's things going?
Life is great, my friend. You know, I'm buried over on the Odd Shopper channel, so I don't get to see the big, huge amount of people that you interact with day to day on the mothership. I'm happy to be here, man. Absolutely happy to be here.
It's great to I love having you pop up. And what I love is I get to catch you during the little interludes. You get those little 5-minute segments between like a deeper dive and live before lock, and you crush those. You did one the other day. I pulled up a DM and I was going to send you a DM, and then something changed with the lineup, and I had to jump to a lineup. But you did one where you had a whole bit where you had the hat on and you were doing like a Philly, like an old man Philly, like there it is. That's the one.
Remember South Philly, the second game. Sounds like the guy Mike used to buy booze off of when he was 18 years old.
Exactly. I've seen every Philly bar I've ever been in my life has had that guy in it.
Look, when you don't bat 100 or 1,000 in the case, right, of giving your bets out, you have to do something else to keep people in there.
That's it. You got to have a little shtick in there, a little something from the people.
Oh, man. All right. So we got an NHA show today to do in the NBA, my friend. And we have two things to get out right away. You already out there know to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe. Terry mentioned the Odd Shopper channel. We have a bunch of channels you could go around, sift through by all means. We want you to take advantage of what's happening at No House Advantage. I'll remind you, but maybe you're new. Maybe you're thinking, all right, well, I trust Terry in the DFS world. So I'll sign up here. Stokastic. That's the code word to use. Sign up word to use. We'll match your first deposit up to $100. Now, you and I have done our share of NHA shows in the past, but it's the first time this year in the NBA. I know the NBA has been a little crazy with the late adjustments with lineups, and you just mentioned it. It's driving you nuts in a betting DFS/betting world, which is what NHA is. So I'm just curious, as a whole, what's the biggest difference in approach with NHA for Terry McBride as opposed to the regular DFS slate?
So everything that I'm about to say, I think, enough of the audience out there knows that I can't actually play on NHA, unfortunately, despite doing all these shows for them. So everything is in theory, the way that I would be approaching all of these things. I think there's a ton of edge in keeping your eye on the news throughout the day. And it's both for large changes and small changes, because a few minor things with these static lines that are released in the morning in the versus the field contests, a few minor things change, and you can have these edges on some of these bets that create some really, really highly likely on either the over or the under, depending on where the situation goes, just based on an expectation of minutes and role changing for a certain guy. So you can see situations like, tonight with the Warriors, and I'm not sure where those lines are. They're not sitting at the top of the board, so it might be accounted for, but actually Jordan Poole is one of the top of the overs. So you'll see a situation like that. We're anticipating most of the Warriors regulars being out, and a big opportunity for Jordan Poole. He's all over the place in DFS, as are most of the other guys for the Warriors. So you'll see opportunities like that emerge, but you'll also see things like that emerge, throughout the day, things that aren't anticipated at the beginning of the day. So you can really spot a few things. And the other thing I like to do in general with No House is I like to look for props for guys that are, it's not necessarily the prime skill set, the thing that you would immediately think of that guy for. Like a Mikal Bridges assists prop has been one that we've discussed a bunch of times on this show recently. And it's always been like 2.5, 3, like a lowish one for a guy who averages, I think, around 4. So it's not like you're saying, this is a ridiculously off line, but it's just enough that the high probabilities come through. And it's not one that the general public is going to immediately grab and take advantage of, despite there being a high probability. So until you spot those win rates that you can get off of our free projections, it becomes difficult to take advantage of those. And I think there's upside in being able to grab those and differentiate your card with those.
Awesome. So you laid out a couple of things here, and Jordan Poole, another guy, and you'll hear me as we talk about this reference throughout, especially on the Odd Shopper betting side, which is always trying to compare it's not just the soft line you're going to get at NHA compared to the books, but in some cases, like with Jordan Poole, and I just went to see if I could bet that specific prop. He's off. He's not on the books, and rightfully so. They're not going to take that liability yet, right? NHA is. So there's an advantage there. The one name, though, as you mentioned, just roll lineup kind of rotation, seeing where we are, that seems to pop is Chris Middleton, right? And we talked about this on the show last week with Josh. Josh was basically like, put the whole company on Middleton unders. And we were sitting there like sweating out with 6 blankets on us, right? Trying to get a virus out of our body. It worked. It hit. But it seems like we're right back to that, where NHA is being very generous with Chris Middleton's rebound and PRA lines. And it seems like our projections on Stokastic are basically mandating, maybe not put the company on it, but go back and hit some unders.
Yeah, it looks like we've come down a little bit in terms of, I think it was, 97, 99, somewhere around there the last time. Yep. And Neil and I had a show last week where we were, hashing out the warrants of the upside of us listing something at 100% as a company on one of those props. It was a TJ Warren that was listed up there as 100%. So some of those, you can get into nitpicking, 99% versus 97 versus, is it 90%, whatever the case may be. These are very high probability bets. And when you think of them in terms of against what you would normally get at a traditional sportsbook line, there you're chasing, the top end we're going to see on a lot of these win rates is in the 60s, the mid 60s. So you don't get the opportunity to just chase anything. So 88% is fantastic. And that's what we're getting, 88.5% on the rebound under for Chris Middleton, and then 86.3% on the under for the PRA that you mentioned. I like giving him the PRA, give him a lot to do, 23.5. It's just above and beyond what he's done so far for the season, averaging 21.1 minutes so far in his 12 games, an 18.5 PRA average. And we're actually cutting him in the minutes projection right now by 4 minutes. We've got him at just 17.4 minutes in a projection tonight, projected for a 16.6 in the PRA. So you can go PRA, you can go on the rebounds as well. He's averaging just 2.7 rebounds a game. We're projecting him for a little bit less than that because, again, a little bit less time. The line's at 4.5. So I think either of those is stout. But if I think of it in terms of just like, could he stumble into a couple additional rebounds just through happenstance? Sure. That's, obviously on the board. So I just like the idea of making that a little bit tougher for him to stumble into this one. Give him the PRA. I think I would favor that one just in terms of thinking out how I would place them on the card. But both of them are very strong by probability.
Yeah, it's a big number, man. Yeah. You're right. And I think we talk about this whenever a PRA or really a PA, RA, whatever it may be, PR, whenever a multiple stat line comes up, the biggest question is, well, are you better off just adding in another category, especially from an under standpoint, giving you another opportunity for 1 or 2 to come down? Rebounds, it's a small line at 4.5. So it makes a lot of sense to just take, especially if he is going to be under the rebounds, under assists. You do have a little bit of room in case, it gets hot for a second or two out there on the floor. So even though that's come down, these are still the 2 highest confidence plays we have across both unders and overs, Terry.
Yeah, 2 very strong plays at the top of the unders board. And I agree with you on that point. Like, just looking at that 4.5, despite it being a very strong probability mark, it is just the kind of situation, like we both touched on it, where he could just luck into 2 additional rebounds. The ball comes off the rim a certain way, it's going to go in his direction. That does tend to happen from time to time. So yeah, stack up a little bit of additional stuff, and you're buying in protection in any direction, right? He gets hot on the points. You've got a little bit of protection from the rebounds, the assists. So I do like that idea of giving him a little bit more to do. And yeah, there's a big drop off. If you look at the overs, the highest ranked over is in the low 80s. So take advantage of these high 80s ones that we do have here on the board. You could also go PJ Washington on the rebounds, sitting at 6.5. That's one that we've got projected basically 2 rebounds below that. And if we're looking at the averages, he averages 4.6 in 32.5 minutes a night. It's another guy we're trimming by about 3 minutes tonight. We've got him projected for 29. But even if he goes to his 32 minutes, I think we're still fine. We're still clear of that by 2 rebounds. If he goes out to 36 minutes, we're looking at a guy who's still not getting that. In a 36-minute sense, he's averaging 5.1 in a per 36. So we're still well clear of that 6.5. I think that one's got a lot of room on it. 84.7% by the math, but it feels pretty comfortable. I think we're fairly high confidence with that one. Where I don't necessarily love the next one on the board with Luka Doncic on the assists.
Yeah. Okay.
That's one that that one, not as much warm and fuzzy on it, right? It's at a line, it's 9.5. So it's a lofty line. His season long average is 8.3. He plays, around 36 minutes a night. So there's no point in looking at a per 36. And if we look at the box scores for the last handful of games, he has come down a little bit. He's had a little bit of a downturn in the assists. I don't have the percentage in front of me for this last handful of games, but in his last run, 5, then a DNP, then just 1, then, or that was the game he got hurt though. Excuse me. It was 5, a DNP. The game he got hurt, he had 0. But the 3 games before that, 6, 4, 7, 8 before that. So it's been a while since he's been in those double-digit assist range. So it does make sense by the math. It makes sense because it's beyond what he averages for the season. So I do think it's there. It doesn't feel in my bones like an 81%er necessarily. I think it's playable, but I'm a little bit less confident in that than I am some of those other ones there. So I think I would go to those other ones before that one. But by the numbers, it's certainly usable.
All right, this is interesting in the sense of normally when we bring something up, there is, and it's usually with the overs, right? It's like super soft, and we have the book example to it, and it correlates with your confidence level on a play. And again, we don't have ownership like the other big ones will give you. We have our own projections and the assumption that since these are free, we have a shit ton of people who are subscribed to Stokastic. They're going to be using our projections. So when you are fading ownership, if you will, in an NHA contest, you're kind of maneuvering through our own projections, which is a long way of saying it's okay to fade or mix and match if you're using it as a standpoint of trying to gain leverage. I say all of that, Terry, because when looking at the books right now, I'm a little surprised. Luka's prop is at 7.5. Now so would that be an automatic over from you from a betting standpoint where you're a little less confident from going under on the Luka standpoint?
Yeah. So taking it as an over, taking over 7.5. I think, it's not necessarily a smash, a lock, but I mean, it definitely, I have more confidence, I think, in that than taking the opposite side and chasing the under on it, despite the math working out that way. Like, it just feels like one that I don't necessarily want to chase, even though it does look right in the numbers, I think, on the under. Whereas the over correlates kind of with just what he does in an average sense, and then we get the idea of the upside Luka return to form, return to that that big time Luka that we know and love. So yeah, I think I would play it that way. I'm not ecstatic about either side of that, though. That is a little bit close to the season long average, but definitely would lean toward the over on that 7.5 line.
So I don't come into this a lot when looking at when we have our projection page, which again, you can go to our free NHA projections. We also have the optimal lineup, which shows you how to put in 10 point, 9 point, 8 points. So you can mix and match on your own, use the strategy that Terry gives you here on our videos, or you can simply just go to the site and say, all right, tell me exactly what to do, right down to how I put the spoon in my mouth. That's fine. We're here from you. Whatever level you need, we're here from you. But I don't see this a lot, Terry, and I'm putting you on the spot here so that I'll explain it as I'm talking. But the 10-point projection, the biggest number one 10-point projection we have, actually isn't the top under. It's Miles Turner under 10.5 rebounds. Meaning we have Luka, PJ, the 2 Middleton props above him when you're just sorting by under. But from an optimal lineup standpoint, that's right there at the top. Now, that may be as far as using Middleton elsewhere, right, as far as mixing and matching the strategy. But it's not often that we have something like Miles Turner 5th on our under sort, yet at the top of our optimal lineup.
Yeah, I'm curious about how that would have come together like that, because I wouldn't think that it would come out with that. One of those Middleton ones would be the top 10 pick there. I would have to think so. That might have not been rerun the last time it was sorted. Sorry, real quick. This is just the number one at the top of the 10 point. The next two are Chris Middleton. The 2 of the next 5 are Chris Middleton. 4 of the next 5, are Chris Middleton. It's just the number one at the 10 points seemed to be the Miles Turner one. Is the Turner one.
Exactly. That just to clarify.
I'm just curious how that one would have leapfrogged over, when it's essentially, let's call it 10 percentage points behind in terms of the probability. I'm curious how that one would have jumped behind the other ones, or jumped above the other ones rather, for the 10 spot. I don't know if we have a potential ownership factor in there. Like, I'm not sure enough of how that optimal lineup card is put together outside of it being, if it was just the straight line math, I would think that the Middleton one would be in that number 1 spot, in that 10 spot rather. So there might be some factor in there that I'm not necessarily accounting for, some kind of differentiation factor that we're saying, hey, using this pick in that first spot is going to gain you more, since it's such a high probability of hitting your 10 anyway. If everybody else is using this one, maybe we can differentiate, get ourselves a little bit ahead of the game in a game theory sense. That might be factored in there somehow. I'm just not entirely sure how those numbers are, or how those lineups are created. So I can't really speak to it, but I do like that pick. 10.5 versus an 8 projection, a guy who averages 7.8. We've seen a little bit of an uptick in minutes. He got the contract extension for a couple of years. So the thinking is, not going to be trying to trade him or anything, probably going to give him the uptick in minutes, but 29.9 minutes for the season. We've actually got him projected just at 28.6 tonight. I could see him going north of 30. Even if he does, I think we've still got room on 10.5. It's a big total for what he does, but certainly, a good rebounder out there. Looking at the season long numbers, 12.6% rebounding percentage for him for the season. So I do like it, but I'm just not entirely sure how to explain through why it would be number one above that Middleton one. I do like the Middleton one better.
Fair enough. And again, a lot of the optimals are based on strategy as far as putting them in. Again, for those who maybe are brand new to brand new on NHA, you can't run 6 Chris Middleton props on the same entry. Right. It's one name per entry. So that's another part of this strategy. We got like 10, 11 minutes left, man. We haven't hit one. You touched on it with Jordan Poole, but I can see people already in their seats. Like, when are these guys going to get to the fucking overs? Come on, overs. We love overs. Well, we don't have a huge amount of confidence compared to the other ones that we mentioned when it comes to overs outside of Jordan Poole. In fact, Terry, the only one that is in the 80 percentile of confidence is Nikola Jokic going over his assists. I just checked. You have the option right now on NHA to get this line at 7.5, where it is on the books currently as we're doing this show at 10.5.
10.5.
Jeez.
That's just silly.
I hate to go Russo on you, but gee whiz.
Yeah, come on, dog. That is a lofty number at the traditional books. We've got him projected for 10.39 though. I mean, we've got him right there. That's coming up on a coin flip in the traditional books versus that NHA against the field line. Yeah, when you're clearing it by like 3 assists in our projection, it's 81.3% by the math, but it feels a little bit more comfy than that. Dude's averaging 10 assists per game, 33.6 minutes a night. You project it out if he saw 36 minutes, you could have it out 10.7. somewhere in the 11 range as far as a projection goes. So totally comfortable taking that one as a top end over. And honestly, I'd be pretty comfortable using that in, the same range as most of those unders that we talked about. Maybe the Middleton PRA, I would consider a stronger one. But if you wanted to tell me you were using this in your second highest confidence pick, I wouldn't really have an issue with it. I would go with that. I could also see using the Jordan Poole threes there, I think on volume alone, not necessarily the best 3-point shooter in the world, 32% for the year, but we know that the volume is going to be there. In a normal game, he's taking 7.9 a game, making 2.5 a game, which already puts us over the 1.5 line. And he's going to see a major uptick in usage tonight, assuming that we get the situation we're expecting, right? We're expecting the primary starters, Wiggins, Curry, Thompson, and Draymond not to be out there tonight. So any combination of those guys, or all 4 of those guys not being out there, is going to result in Jordan Poole's usage going from something like 28 to something like 35%. He is going to be chucking out there. So I would expect around 10 3-point attempts. I see him cruising past the 1.5 unless he just has an absolutely tragic shooting night, which, even for a 32% shooter, we don't necessarily want to expect. So like that one quite a bit as well. Either one of those, I think you can mix in pretty liberally in the, the 8 and 9 spot on the overs.
Real quick on the Pool, and it's not even pushback. It's more of a follow-up. It's 12.5, 12, depending on where you look, maybe 11 if you want to live dangerously. Point line here on the road in Denver. We know that there's going to be a body or two, familiar face that won't be out there. How much this gets brought up in betting. It gets brought up in traditional DFS, the bigger sites. It gets brought up in NHA, rightfully so. Blowout factor. Is that ever a deterrent for you when you're looking at somebody? Because you're right. If Poole is on the floor, he should be taking as many threes as humanly possible. But if they're down by 28 in the third quarter, that's going to significantly limit his time, right?
It will, but I think just, given the idea of the uptick in usage, even through the first 3 quarters of the game, If we take into account that, he's already taking basically 8 a game. So we're taking, we've got 6 of our 8 attempts and add some usage in. I think we're still around our 8 attempts through 3 quarters, probably, 7, 8 attempts. So considering he's averaging 2.5 on those takes, maybe it would knock it down in the math, and maybe it wouldn't make me quite as confident if I'm projecting that. But I also don't necessarily know that he definitely loses minutes in that blowout situation. For one, especially if all 4 of those guys are out, they're just going to be short on available bodies. And for 2, like, who are they throwing out there where they know what they've got in most of these guys? It's not like they've got to get a lot of test run for a guard in there that would step into these shoes. So I see him getting basically around his projected minutes. We're projecting him right now at just 30.7. Also. So it's not like we're doing this against a 36-minute projection. I think that projection is actually potentially a little bit low. So if we did think of him in terms of getting 34, 36 minutes, this would actually be even stronger. So there's also that factor here. I think we're maybe even accounting for that in these numbers. I hadn't actually noticed that yet.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? And as far as what you were saying, as far as it being accounted for, baked in, if you will, with our projections. I do want to bounce just a couple more on the overs. I know we're in that 78 percentile, but Jamal Murray does pop 2 times over, and we're actually 3 technically. If you just look at like the top 10 that we have, his PRA is at the bottom there, the 73, but from assists and then really points is the bigger one. And again, the books are off significantly on both, where you're getting an edge here. His assists are 6.5. Doesn't matter that it's plus money. That's what the books have, 6.5. And points, again, you're getting under this because he's moved up to 22.5. What changed in the last morning or so here, Terry, where he would open up on NHA at 15.5 and is bet up to the books at 22.5?
I mean, look, the books are right. We've got him projected at 21.7. That's right in line. So this is one of those ones I think where NHA is just trying to create, it's like a low salary on a DFS site, right? NHA is trying to create some opportunity, and they do that deliberately. They leave some of these broad lines for people to have some value plays, some low salary, or some, you could look at it the other way and call it a super, super expensive Giannis type of a player. But either way, I do think that's a very strong one. We've got it at 78.4% as far as the over goes. But if we want to do it in terms of box score hunting, which is not always the best way to look at these kind of things, but let's take a look at it. Since the start of this calendar year, he's missed that total 1 time. That was on January 2nd. He scored 14 points. Every other time out so far this year, he's been over that number. So I think on that alone, we're creating an expectation that he's going to clear it pretty handily. In his, 43 games now, 32 minutes a night, 19.4 points per game. And per 36 cents, he goes up to 21.5. We've got him projected to play just under 36 minutes tonight. I am very, very comfortable with the over on the points. And you could use in any one of the other ones. The assists seems fairly comfy. It's only at 4.5. He averages 5.7. He's a solid assists point guard, 24.6% assist rate. So there's definitely an opportunity there. I wouldn't necessarily play his assists and Jokic's assists on the same card, though, where I think you can squeeze in the Murray points over and the Jokic assists, put those together. You're gaining a little bit of correlation out of that, where I think, it's not necessarily negatively correlated on their 2 assists together, but you're not helping each other on the 2 assists together. We're not getting hockey assists there. Right. So just something to think of in terms of that. And I just like the points over so much that I don't feel the need to go to any of those other Murray ones outside of, downstream, 50 cards downstream. Maybe we're entering some of those.
One more that I wanted to throw at you, and we'll remind some people about what we're doing here before we get out. Anything that you have that we didn't hit, by all means. But Halliburton is back clearly, and the 3-pointers, it's 2.5 on the book. So you're getting an extra 3 here. Our projections are over the 2.5, which again, it's 2.7. So it's shaded higher clearly than the 2.5 is that line that you would look at. 2.2, 2.3, maybe giving people pause. 2.7, a much stronger play. I know it's only at 73.34 technically as far as where we have it going over, but a guy who has been out, and clearly that team needs him back. So I was just curious how you see that this play really with Halliburton. And maybe there's another one too, or just Halliburton in the 3s in general.
Yeah, I like that one. I think that one's a good call. Good 3-point shooter, or at least was before he went out, and was having a very nice year. It's nice to get him back. He was taking 7.4 a game in his 33.4 minutes a night. We've got him projected to play a little bit less than that, 28.5 minutes in his first game back, but they haven't really talked too much about any strict limitations or anything like that. So I think we're just being a little bit cautious, a little bit conservative with his minutes projection there, but it's only at 1.5. He was shooting 40%, making 3 a night on his 7.4 takes. So even if he takes a little bit fewer than the 7.4, knock it down to 6.5, I think we're still pretty clean on that 1.5. We've got him projected for 2.6. I like that number. I think that's pretty strong. So 73, 75%, somewhere in that range. Use it down in the middle of a card somewhere. And, I think you could even probably get away with bumping it up for differentiation's sake if you're making a bunch of different cards, or even if you're only entering one and you want to get a little bit different with it, try and get further afield from some of those other ones, bump it up into an 8 or a 9 range. He was getting into those numbers pretty frequently before he got hurt. Looking back, let's see, we had all right, so the last game, January 11th, I think that's the one where he got hurt, only played 27 minutes, took 5, made 1, but before that, took 6, made 2, 10, 3, took 7, made 2, took 4, made 2, 6, made 2. So he was pretty consistently getting that before he got hurt. And before going back a little further than that, there was even more volume in December. So I think there's plenty of volume, plenty of opportunity for a good 3-point shooter, even with the potentially limited minutes.
Anything that you saw that was maybe in that 70 or low 70 percentile on either side, a play that and you talked about technically twice. So I'm asking you to do it on the way out again for the third time. So if you don't, you could say, shut up. I did it twice already. You did it with Jordan Poole, where we talked about that in the beginning, and then also with Luka's assist. But either way, good or bad, is there anything that you noticed that you thought, I like that a little bit better than where we have it? Or, I'm a little more cautious about it. Or simply just a freaking play you love outright so much that you thought, damn it, Shander, we're out of time. How come you didn't mention Marcus Morris PRA under?
I will always take a Morris brother PRA under. That's I hadn't spotted that one, but let me sort back over to that. 21.5. Oh yeah, that's meaty.
Come up with. Sorry.
That's a good call out. That's pretty meaty sitting there at 21.5. We've got a projected at 16.5. We're talking about a guy who we've got with a 25.5 minute projection. He averages 29 minutes a night, so we're cutting him by a handful of minutes. He only averages a 19.1 PRA in more minutes than we're giving him tonight. I think that one's pretty strong at 77%. The other interesting ones on the unders here, we've got some pretty strong looking unders for RJ Barrett, who is potentially running into a minutes issue with his coach. We saw Tibbs go to Emmanuel quickly down the stretch and through the entire overtime period in their last game. Barrett typically starts the fourth quarter with the second unit, then goes to the bench for a handful of minutes, and then was coming back for like the last 2-3 minutes of the fourth quarter. And this last time out, we didn't see that, and we have seen Tibbs progressively giving quickly more and more of that fourth quarter stretch before bringing Barrett back in. So it's a little bit concerning about where the minutes are going to be for Barrett. We're projecting him down to 33.9. He averages 34.5, but we've seen him go well north of 36 in a lot of occasions. So it's just a little concerning as a Knicks fan, but as a better, I think those unders are looking fairly strong. The rebounding is under 6.5 is the line. We've got them projected for right around 5. We're calling that 77% or so. You could also take the threes, not the greatest 3-point shooter in the world. Anyway, 34%. Takes 5.4 a game, only makes 1.8, and that line is sitting at 2.5. So that's kind of a fat line for a mediocre 3-point shooter. So either one of the RJ unders I like.
Love it. At Digital Big 21. Thank Terry tonight. Show him a screen cap when you take home the 5X against the house here on NHA. And maybe throw him, you have your Venmo up there on Twitter or whatever the hell option is.
Nah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're not one of those guys.
I'm not. Yeah.
I know.
I like the people to win their money and keep their money. Yeah.
All right. For Terry, for Mike, I'm Aton. The three of us, thank you again. Big time. Win some money out there. No House Advantage. Stokastic. We'll match your first deposit up to $100, man. It's awesome.
I bet. And a free month, right? That's still going?
Yes, I believe so. I'm sorry. They